I just want to remind everyone the pledge that Joe Biden made when it came to climate change and particularly environmental justice, right? This idea of environmental racism, poor communities of color always seem to get hit worse by the injustices of, pollution, whether your water's polluted or you don't have the infrastructure to have clean water. Just, you see what happens in Flint, right? That doesn't happen in any wealthy majority, white area, but it happens in Flint, and it's allowed to happen for over 10 years. And so Joe Biden, in his campaign, well, let's see what he said. Let's see what he said about environmental racism and what he planned on doing about that.
Lifting up these communities makes us all stronger as a nation and increases the health of everybody. Environmental justice will be at the center of all we do, addressing the disproportionate health and environmental and economic impacts on communities of color, so-called fence line communities, especially those communities, brown, black, Native American, poor whites. It's hard, the hard-hit areas like Cancer Alley in Louisiana, or the Route 9 corridor in the state of Delaware. That's why we're going to work to make sure that they receive 40% of the benefits of key federal investments in clean energy, clean water, and wastewater infrastructure.
All right, so in light of that, right, let's keep that in mind. That's a promise that he made to voters, before he was elected, before he actually had any power. Now, that voters went out and voted for him. He is in power. And so, we're fresh off the, what happened in Texas, with the Texas energy grid failure and all that stuff. And, obviously the subsequent, FEMA, he gave FEMA to Texas because of, everything that was going on there. Obviously, a lot of people were, very cold, without energy, without heat, and there's a lot of fallout that comes from that, economic as well. But here's what Biden did when he gave FEMA to Texas. Let's read this. It says, Biden Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall told reporters Thursday that FEMA has so far supplied Texas with 60 generators for critical infrastructure, 729,000 liters of water, more than 10,000 wool blankets, 50,000 cotton blankets, and 225,000 meals, according to The Hill. I think great, right? If we have the ability to help those people, let's go out and help those people, right? When they in their time of need, when they need help. And then as a result of that, you get, right, the Texas governor, less than 2 weeks later, he's, opening everything, no mask mandate. And you even see in this article, he says, Texas governor on ending mask order. We no longer need government running our lives. So by that, I guess he means we don't need the government to come in and help, considering we did nothing to, retrofit or make sure that our infrastructure could handle something like a winter storm. And then we get bailed out by the federal government. But like I said, that's good. The people of Texas shouldn't have to always account for their leaders selling them out for money, right? So I think they should have got FEMA, because here's what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi, in case, people haven't been seeing it in the national news media. And of course, it hasn't been getting the same attention as other things right now, even though these people have been 2 weeks without clean water. Let's take a look at this CBS news report on what's going on in Jackson.
Tonight, frustration is boiling over in Jackson after 2 weeks without water.
I've had to walk to gas stations just to use the bathroom sometimes.
Summer Williams is 8 months pregnant. There's no water coming from her tap. She has to fill buckets from a faucet at her dad's house 30 minutes away, get it back to her apartment, then boil it just to bathe and cook.
I'm due soon, and the only thing that's on my mind is how I'm going to handle it when the baby gets here.
Williams is among the 10,000 without any water, but the entire city, more than 165,000 people, hasn't had safe drinking water since the mid-February storm. The sub-zero temperatures crumbled Jackson's aging water system. 80 major water main breaks. Pressure so low, it's not reaching some neighborhoods.
We know that people are suffering and they want it on now.
Charles Williams is the director of Public Works, in charge of restoring people's water.
I think that they have every right to be upset, and I think they have every right to be frustrated.
Can you give them any assurances of a date?
It's just very difficult to try and have a definitive timeline of when we will get out of this.
But for Summer Williams, time is running out.
It's hard now, but I know it's going to be harder by the time my baby gets here.
And a sign of the desperation here in Jackson tonight, we have seen people pull off the roads, stop, bring buckets over, fill them up with water here to take home. Because at this location, they didn't have to wait in line. Nora?
Janet Shamlian, thank you.
And as we see here, Joshua Potash on Twitter says the entire city of Jackson, Mississippi either has no water or is under a boil water alert. It's been 2 weeks now, going on 3. Why isn't this getting the attention Texas got? I'm 100% with you. Texas got a lot of attention, I think rightfully so. There was a crisis going on there. But same thing happened in Jackson, Mississippi. Why is Jackson, Mississippi not getting the same attention? I don't see a bunch of fundraisers going up for Jackson, Mississippi. And let's not forget, who are the residents of Jackson, Mississippi disproportionately? Right? Well, let's look at these demographic highlights. By 2014, 80% of Jackson residents were African American, up from 47% of residents in 1980. So this is a 80% black population. They don't get FEMA. They're not getting a bunch of money pouring in to help them, even though they've been 2 straight weeks without clean water. They're having to boil water. They're having to go 30 minutes to an hour outside, pregnant, outside of their city just to get water to bathe in. They're not getting any attention. Joe Biden, you said are you going to uphold this promise you made to voters that went out in the middle of a pandemic and voted for you to actually stand up against environmental racism and for environmental justice? Doesn't really look like it. Doesn't really look like you're even paying attention to it. In fact, those same people who probably a good amount of them are making the minimum wage, not only are you not going to give them FEMA and help them after a crisis, you're not even going to increase their minimum wage. You're not even going to try. You're going to cave at every single turn to Joe Manchin, who's basically a Republican. Wait, I thought you said you could reach across the aisle to Republicans. No, in fact, you can't even reach inside your own party to someone who basically caucuses half with the Democrats and half with the Republicans to get him on board with a $15 minimum wage, which you promised. And I don't want to relitigate that, but come on, like this is life and death for a lot of people. These people in Jackson, Mississippi need that. And I love what Hood Vogue is tired of poverty said on Twitter. He said, you can't tell me environmental racism isn't a thing when motherfuckers in Jackson, Mississippi might be going on week 3 with no clean water and nobody on a national level is saying anything. Joe Biden, I haven't heard you say anything about Jackson, Mississippi. Kamala Harris, our black queen, right? Vice president. What about this 80% black population struggling without water? Are you going to bring any attention to that? Fundraise anything? GoFundMe? $2-3 million for an 80% black population? Oh no. We can do that for Texas, but we can't do that for a single city in Mississippi. Yo, it's so easy. It's so easy to do this. Why? Because they promise all these things. They say all these nice things. They know all the words. But when are they going to actually start implementing some actions in a place that are going to actually make our society more equitable? Give black people a chance. Give poor people a chance. Communities of color a chance. It's been over a month of Joe Biden being in office. And I can count on both hands how many promises this guy's already broken. Is Jackson, Mississippi going to see part of that infrastructure bill in September? Oh, we'll see. We'll see. And I'll be right here reporting it too. Because in that video, he promised that a good chunk of that infrastructure spending is going to go towards communities of color that have been disadvantaged by our system and our society at every single turn. Places like Jackson, Mississippi. We'll see. Because right now it's not looking great. And when are we going to start pushing him left on stuff like this? Because this whole push him left thing, that's all great and fine in theory. But remember, when you don't push him left and he continues to get pulled right by people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and really his own self, his own legislative record, it hurts real people like the people in Jackson, Mississippi, like the people in Flint, like the people, on the Native American reservations who have been trying to get clean water and don't have the money for that infrastructure. And that's been going on for years, for decades. We need the left pushing needs to start, and it needs to have started weeks ago. But if you were asleep then, well, I hope you wake up now, because this stuff is real.